So I think we're recording now. Yeah, awesome. So this is the 9th episode of Life on Life's Terms. We have a fella here named Larry, and the topic of discussion today is going to be self-esteem. You can reach us at Patreon. All you have to do is punch in Life on Life's Terms, and if you'd like to give us a $5 donation per week, that'd be fantastic. It'd be greatly appreciated, and it would also help with some of our costs in order to distribute this content. You can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitches, as well as YouTube. So here's Larry. Hey?
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
It's great. How's your day going so far?
It's fantastic.
Fantastic. So let's talk about where your self-esteem was before times.
Where my self-esteem was? Well, growing up as a kid, I had very little or lack of self-esteem. I was the hardest person on myself that there ever was. I'd always be in a corner somewhere wondering why me, why this stuff had to happen to me. And as growing up, and I come from a family of, there's 5 kids. I got 3 brothers, a sister. I had a mom and a dad, but I don't know, I was just different. I never fit in any crowd. I didn't like myself, and as a result, it was like I was fighting society my whole life, right? Like grade 1, they held me back, which is a nice way of saying I failed. And bottom line was that I didn't want to do any of the work. I was rather be out fighting with the other kids, arguing with them, because I was a sociable deviant, I guess you could say. I just didn't get along with anybody else, and I was an asshole. Bottom line, asshole from the get-go. And I have a lot of friends that can probably attest to that. How they put up with me, I don't know. I really don't.
So let's talk a little bit about the difference between self-esteem and ego. Can you see, I guess, through your travels or your journey, if you could say that you have self-esteem today, would you be able to suggest what the difference is between ego and self-esteem?
Well, self-esteem, I think, is feeling good about yourself and not taking it to that all-intrusive plane where you think you're the best thing around and the greatest thing is like since sliced bread. Self-esteem is just really feeling good about yourself and being on an even keel, getting to like yourself. Whereas ego, well, you know who I am. I'm the best there is around, so don't mess with me, right? That's what it's all about, right?
I think there's also another thing where with ego, you have to take inventory in order to remember why that ego exists. Whereas with self-esteem, you never really have to remember what you've done. All you have to recognize is that you can get through your goals on a day-to-day basis, and I think today a lot of men, if you were to agree with me on this point, I think a lot of men don't know the difference, or even people don't know the difference between what ego and self-esteem is. I believe that our society perpetuates us in a way where ego has blurred the line of what self-esteem really is. And so all of a sudden we find ourselves in this place where we have an identity crisis. And the reason why we have this huge identity crisis is because we have no idea what self-esteem is. And this is why I asked you, what was your childhood like running on lack of self-esteem? Because who the hell was it that was going to teach us what self-esteem was? My era was Hulk Hogan, right? Your era, it might have been the Duke. And so where the hell is that teaching us any self-esteem, right?
Yeah, I certainly didn't learn it in my family, and I'm not putting my parents down at all, but I don't know. I think I was chemically imbalanced, maybe because nowadays they can identify all these fetal alcohol, all that stuff. Maybe I had some of that stuff in me, or, I was just attention deficit, right? Because, like I say, going into school, I ended up in the slow class. And the only reason why I ended up in the slow class, I had low self-esteem. I didn't want to do the work, and boy, oh boy, there I really found out who I was, because when you're in a class with the bigger kids and you got a big mouth, you learn pretty quick either to run fast or duck, right? So, it's I think self-esteem for me now, or was then, there was none, hardly at all, if any, right? And like I said, that's why I always had dogs growing up, because dogs show you undying love, right? So I had that one companion that'd always be there for me, right? I couldn't go to my mom or my dad. If I went to my dad and had a problem with another kid, he said, well, you want me to show you what it's all about? I'll give you a smack. Go out there and fight the kid, right? I didn't want to fight, right? And my mom, God bless her, I loved her to death. But she came off a Métis settlement, and her too, she didn't have a lot of knowledge on how to raise kids. And where do we learn that anyways, So growing up, yeah, it was rough, but I think I made it rough for myself, right? I didn't like myself. I fought with my brothers. We're all close in age, right? Two of us would be fighting my older brother or whatever. And in school, I was mostly in the principal's office at an early age for growing up. And then when you get to junior high, well, I wasn't in school. And if I was in school, I was either high or around the corner drinking some booze or whatever, right? And to me, I'd rather have been out of school than not in school, because I wanted to smoke dope and do drugs as my buddies, because I thought that was the cat's meow, because I was accepted there, right? Whereas anywhere else, I could be in a crowd, and it could be a family gathering even, but I still didn't feel like I belonged, right? It's a hard pill to swallow, but today, it gets better because of, one, the steps, right? The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which we did in CA, and that was the basis for everything for me, right? It started me off, and I never thought like a simple set of 12 steps would get me to where I could feel better about myself. But saying that, that's not everything that I have done, right? It took me quite a while to get to this point, but just recently I went to a psychologist, right, or a counselor, and I went through and did all the work to get to see the lady, and well, it helped that she was nice looking, but you know what I mean. And so I went through quite a few sessions with her, and then she mentioned something called Men Without Hats, right? And so I went to a couple of their things, and also I did some CODA, but I felt CODA wasn't for me. It just didn't fit in, right? If I'm talking about self-esteem and all that other stuff, it's stuff inside me that I had to get out. I knew that, right? So Men Without Hats helped quite a bit, and then from that I went into something called Hearts That Dare, and none of this stuff would be possible without Cocaine Anonymous and the 12 steps, because I would not have done any of this work. Right, I love getting high, and in the beginning it was a lot of fun because coming down wasn't that bad. But as more you went along, it was fun, and it was fun with problems, and it was just problems in the end, right? And none of that was helping my self-esteem, right? Sure, at times helped my pride, my ego, because here I am. Oh, hey, look at me! I'm 45 years old, 48 years old, and I got no shirt on, and I got no stomach, and all these young chicks are hanging around, and well, it was because of the drugs and the money. It wasn't because of me, right? And that was all part and parcel, just a lot of shit and a lot of crap that I went through to get to where I'm at today. And I know a lot of people. There's a song I have in my collection, and it's by the Wood Brothers. You never learn anything from being happy. So I certainly know that I've learned a lot of stuff. I still have a lot to learn as I go along, because I'm making a lot of mistakes. And it was just last week I told the guy, I said, he was having trouble in the relationship. I said, I'm not telling you this because I think I know more than you, or I'm not talking down to you. I said, I'm talking from experience. I said, I've fucked up more relationships than you can care to know about, right? So I know all the wrong things that I've done in my life, and I'm certainly trying to correct a lot of that stuff and a lot of the actions, and how it's helped me is, if I go to, let's put it back a few years ago where I was in the car and I've been a few days drinking and somebody cut me off. So I'll show them, I cut them off, and then it got reported, and next thing you know, I got road rage on my thing. My insurance went up, $1,000 fine. That's what it was like. And early recovery, right? I remember my mom asked me to drive her to bingo. So I drove her to bingo. And on the way there, I was beeping my horn, giving everybody the finger. My mom, she was not alive anymore, but she was a real nice lady. And She hardly ever swore, but she got out of that car and she told me, "You fucking asshole," right? That's what she said. That was my mom. And she said, "I'm never getting in that car with you again," right? And this is where my self-esteem has taken an upwards climb, right? It's because of this stuff that, especially when you do steps 3, right? Opened the door so you could get the rest of the stuff out. And step 2 came to even a power greater than myself. Yeah, that, I fought with it and fought with it and fought with it. I don't know why today. I just don't know why. Mm-hmm. Every time I heard the word God, I thought like I was in church maybe, or what it says in the Bible, but it's not. It's a spiritual experience, right? That's what it is. And I fought it for quite a while, but, when we did my first set of steps, it relieved the obsession, right? It did. But it didn't get rid of a lot of other stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's why going along and still just about 8 years clean, I was still having a lot of issues. And I still do today. I mean, I don't know a person who doesn't, right? But what it's done for me is I can drive my car, and very rarely do I give anybody the finger anymore, cut them off, get mad. I still shake my head at times, which sometimes that can even cause a lot of problems just doing that, right?
Yeah.
And at work, I've learned one thing. If someone's screaming at me like my boss, why escalate it? Why scream back? Because you know what? It's just going to take it up a notch or two. I don't want to, and I don't want to fight and argue anymore. There's going to be times when that happens. But then if I do a step 10, personal my inventory daily, then I can get that off, right? Because it says that we do steps 4 and 9 throughout the day. Yeah. So we live it, right? So
let's unpack that a little bit for some of the people who are listening that aren't AA involved or CA involved. So one of the things that I'm going to we'll walk back a little bit as you were talking about and I think I had even mentioned it, where we have to keep an inventory for our ego, right? So like if I were to compare, I think for people out there right now, they may, especially men, I know a lot of men who say, well, I can drink a 40 ouncer of rye or whatever, and that becomes their mantra of their masculinity.
Yeah, their standard.
Or it's I can bench press 340 pounds. The reality is of what you're doing, in my opinion, does not equate to your self-esteem. The fact that you may have benched 350 pounds last week and this week you're benching 360 pounds, that definitely accounts to your self-esteem. But what you're doing doesn't qualify. Instead, what qualifies is your well-roundedness. It's not just one goal that you're getting. It's all of your goals are being met, right? And I think it boils down to this other thing when, like, what to recognize is the difference between ego and self-esteem. And so if we're sitting there, as the phrase is, resting upon our laurels, right? This is what I've done. Well, that's ego, flat out. And that's pride, right? Look at me, as I'm wiping my hands off on my chest, right? I mean, that's what ego is. An ego is heavy to carry around. Self-esteem is earned and needs to be proven daily, and I think that's the huge difference. And I think a lot of people who aren't AA involved or CA involved, like normies, normal people, I think one of the things that even Jordan Peterson has been talking about recently is finding something that's bigger than you, right? In whatever capacity that may be. Because the reality is this, we are not end all be all. There is something bigger than us. It could be the river, the stars, the sun, the moon, God, whatever the hell you want to call it. But the fact of the matter is there's something bigger than us. And that's the thing that we need to rely upon, If we can experience that, I mean, I just heard it said a little while ago, and I think people will notice this if you're in the mountains, or people who live around mountains. They're really humble. And the reason why they're more humble people is because they live around things that are optically bigger than them all of the time, right? And I think this is the same thing with people who live by the Great Lakes and people who live by natural things that are bigger than them. I think it's lost when people live, let's say, in the prairies and they don't recognize how big the sky is, We need as we are as humans, as animals to a degree, right? We need that recognition from something that's visibly bigger than us in order to prove. And I think the only advantages that alcoholics and addicts have over normal people is the fact that we damn well know every day when we wake up that our addiction and our alcoholism is bigger than us. So even for normal people to listen to this, I mean, are we willing to say that in times of our life throughout the day, we are the smallest thing there? We are insignificantly nothing. And that's okay to be nothing. And the only things that measure up are the goals that we produce in front of ourselves. And I think if we look at that, like if you were to look at what your ego looked like back then, what were some of the qualifying things that you did in order to attribute that, right? I mean, that's a scary fucking place to live. It really was. I mean, who in the hell wants to remember that they could shove more dope up their ass while the cop was arresting you, and that became the qualifying marker for who you are and how proud you were about yourself? Like, what kind of fucking story is that? You know, you're not telling your mom that. You're sure as shit not telling your dad that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like,
yep.
And kids today, if I could say that, I mean, this Generation Z and the millennial generation, we lost that. We truly believe that ego is self-esteem. And that's what I'm trying to touch on here is we don't recognize the difference between self-esteem and ego. You only know it once you've earned self-esteem. And I think if you're sitting there with all the gizmos and all the gadgets and you're still not happy, the reality is you're living on ego. You know, you're living in a prideful world. You're not living in a world where you are truly showing yourself on a daily basis that you're worth something, you know?
Well, for me, all this stuff, you know, like nowadays it begins with like, I have less now than I had a few years back and when I was in my addiction. You know, I had a condo, was almost paid off, right? So, and I had a ton of money and it was there, and well, the condo's gone, a ton of money's gone. I got less today in material things, but I've got more in things that matter. And like when I was in my addiction, I always had dogs too, but I wouldn't take them for walks because I was too busy doing my drugs. Mm-hmm. And this is where maybe some of the self-esteem comes in now, is because through that animal who's kind of I channel my higher power through at times, is I get up in the morning. One of the first things I do after I eat is I take that dog for a walk. And as I'm walking around the block, I look up in the sky and I recite the Serenity Prayer. Mm-hmm. And I just thankful that I'm alive, right? Because I can see the stars, I'm able to walk, right? And I don't judge people, because 2 days ago I was walking at 5 a.m. and there's two ladies sitting in the park and we're talking. It was pretty cool out. Mm-hmm. And they both had big bottles of 7-Up and Fanta, but there wasn't 7-Up and Fanta in the bottles, right? Yeah. I just walked by and said hi, right? And by some things that I do, right? I mean, it's not, like you said, it's not just one thing in particular. It's all the little things I do. And the program is the big hit on that, because it got me here today, right? If I didn't come into the rooms, I'd still be out there using it, or I'd be dead, right? Mm-hmm. And I think addicts and alcoholics are so much more grateful in life for what they have because of where they've walked and what they've been through, right? And I look at it now that I got a host of friends, right? When I was younger, and all these people would say, stay the hell away from Larry. He's such a miserable bastard, and if you turn your back, he's going to probably jump you and get in a fight with you, right? And I had that thing when I was drinking that they didn't want to come near me either, right? Because man, I could chug a bottle of tequila, right? Or I could drink Alcool, right? And that was, well, look at me, look what I got, right? Mm-hmm. Right? And that stuff doesn't matter anymore, right? What matters is how I feel about myself today. And how do I feel that way? By getting up in the morning, like I said, and doing the stuff I do, right? It's not necessarily one thing. I'm glad that I'm able to get up in the morning. I ran into a guy the other day through work, right? I got a call out on a sump pump, and this guy shows up, and it's somebody I knew when I was 15 years old, And he said to me, Larry, he says, what? Isn't it something we're still here at 62 years old of age? And I looked at him and said, yeah, if you knew the shit I was through and where I'm at today, it's simply just amazing that I'm here. So now I've got a few friends that we're going to start meeting and having coffee, right? Maybe every second Sunday or once a month. And these are guys that are not in the program, but I also tell you, in your life, get some friends that are outside the program so you can experience life with some normal people, you know. And, you know, I've done things now that I've never dreamed I would do in my life, right? To Mexico. I spent $2,500 going to Mexico. Jesus, that could buy a lot of drugs, right? Right? I'd be gone for a while. And also, I did some zip lining, right? Some rappelling, swimming in an underwater cave in very cold water. I tried scuba diving, right? It didn't click, but that's okay, right? That's nothing to burn my butt over, right?
Yeah.
Right, and like I work out, I go to work. I don't mind work. Some of the people at work can be a little hard to get along with, and sure, at times I can be too, but it's nothing that I lose my poop over, right?
Yeah.
Right? It just seems that today I have a better retrospective look at life because of where I've been and what the things I've gone through. You know, like step 4, when you get that stuff out, right? That's one thing. And then step 5, when you sit down and you have that two-way conversation with whoever you're doing your step 5 with, right? Admitted to God, to ourselves, and other human beings, the exact nature of our wrongs. You get that done. And, you know, I like I said, I left where I was at, started driving my car, and I'm driving down the road bawling my eyes out. But it was just finally the relief. It was like a valve just shooting off, and it was great, right? And I can go down and sit in a group of people now. I've still got some issues where if I'm in a crowd of people, I'll sit off by myself.
Yeah.
And like I was at a convention recently, and people were doing things. I sat in this chair and I was there for 2 hours. And someone goes by, "Are you still here? Sitting in the same chair?" I said, "Yeah, why not?" Right? That gives me times to meditate. And you know, when you go to a thing like Men Without Hats, that one where a bunch of guys got together and did things right and talked about their stuff. But then when I went to Hearts That Dare, and you're digging deep and getting some of the stuff out, and when you sidebar off because you don't want to go any deeper, the guy won't let you go. He says, "Come on now, you got to get in there, you got to get it out." And that's probably one of the best things that's really helped me, is because I didn't want to release this stuff. I didn't want to talk to people about it, but that's a men's group, and the only reason why I'm there is because of the 12 steps, right? And it's helped me immensely, right? It's probably, I think, at a certain point in my sobriety, my higher power guided me to just to certain places, right? Got me to that lady who's a counselor, and then I went to Men Without Hats, and I went to Hearts That Dare, right? And I got in some relationships like everybody else does, but it's not end all to be all anymore, right? If I find someone that I like, great. If I don't, I'm not going to lose anything over it, right?
So let me ask you a question. What are your stop signs if you see that your ego's cropping up? So, like, what would be the thing that would almost be like code red? If you were to see that happening, you would recognize that it's your ego as opposed to self-esteem that's happening. What would that look like for you?
What would I do? Or
like what would the situation be if you were to make a hypothetical? Like, for instance, I'll say this: if I were to catch myself saying, "Oh, I don't know, I've done this," or whatever it may be, right? And I qualify what I've done as who I am, as opposed to the goals that I've created for myself and prepared myself through that, I would recognize that that's my ego coming in, as opposed to my self-esteem being healthy, right?
Well, it's taken a while to figure that stuff out, because in the industry that I work in, I've been doing it for probably 40 years. So I would like to say that I know it all, but you never do. You learn daily, and at times I have to catch myself when someone's on the other line saying, "Well, you know, I've been in this business for 20 years, and I can tell you." And I go, "Uh-oh, settle down, Larry. Don't say anything. Just relax and bring it about in an easy way where you can get the guy to come around," right? I'll put it this way. A guy said to me not too long ago, says, "You don't want to sell me anything? Is that what you're saying to me?" And I looked at him and I said, "No, sir, that's not what I said. And don't put words in my mouth, please. I said, simply, if you give me the information I need, I will sell you whatever you want."
Yeah, yeah.
Or as the old Larry would have said, up yours, drop dead, and tell
Yeah.
the guy where to go.
Yeah.
So I catch myself with a couple of workers because they're fairly new. And the one guy, I'll say something to him, and I realize he's upset. So I say, "Okay, listen, I'll just leave you alone. But if you need help, just come and get me. I'll help you," right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know I just recognize that by jumping in and on somebody else, I may hurt them. And it's only my pride doing that, right? And my ego, right? So I try not to do it as much anymore, but even somewhere you could just say the simplest thing and turn the person the wrong way. So if I do that, if I've known and done it, I'll go back to the person and say, "Listen, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to come out the way it did," right? So I don't have a lot of, expectations. Mm-hmm. If I don't have expectations, then I don't come into a lot of hassle or troubles with other people, right?
Yeah.
It's when I have expectations, and if I fear that they're not going to accept me the way I am at, that's another thing that can take me down a road or a notch or two, right? So, yeah, like I said, I don't have any expectations a lot of times. I just fit in as best I can, but I don't let people step on me at the same time either, right? I know who I am today. Right?
Yeah.
My name's Larry, right?
And I think that's one of those things too, where when we breach that ego, like I said, ego is based upon what we've done in the past, right? And I think even like normal people and addicts, whoever can really live by this. What you did yesterday doesn't matter shit today. What you're going to do tomorrow is only a goal that's in the making. What you're doing right now is going to show you what self-esteem is, because that's all that matters. And the fact I think the fact in that is, if we're holding on to what we did yesterday, it doesn't account for shit. And that's what blows up the balloon of ego. I always tell people, ego's like 1,000-pound lead balloon. It's still a balloon. You can carry it around, but it's made out of fucking lead. It's heavy as shit. When I look at what self-esteem is not heavy. It's just as if it's steam, And I think the other thing, when you're talking about basically step 5 is a confession for those who are normies out there, but it's not a confession with any clergy. Bishop Sylvain and I had talked about this last week. We touched on the step 5 a little bit. And one of the things I think that we need to recognize about step 5 is it's talking about the shitty things that we do. But this is the one thing that I always hear quite often about a step 5 is, well, I thought about killing him. Well, guess what? Thoughts are thoughts. They don't qualify. I mean, just because you had a thought doesn't mean that you did it. And if you didn't do it, it doesn't matter. We all have homicidal thoughts. You're a fucking animal. That's what you are as a human. You are an animal at the end of the day. Sure, we have more consciousness, and we're way more intelligent than any other animal out there, granted. But the fact of the matter is we all have a primal fight, flight, or freeze mentality in us. And if you don't honor that, and you don't recognize that you have that, and to think that you're something above that, that's craziness. We've lost it at that point, And there's so many of us humans, so to say, who do that. I mean, addicts aren't the only ones who are creating this Opus Dei, whipping the shit out of your back over thoughts that you once had. That's not the reality. Thoughts are thoughts. They were not thoughts that turned into actions that you acted upon. You can only give penance or rectify an action that you committed against somebody, not a thought. A thought is your own. And as of right now, there are no crimes for thinking,
Well, but even that part now, the thoughts don't come as much as they used to, right? And Lord knows, when I was back a few years ago and somebody crossed my path and threatened me, well, because I was doing drugs, I said to the person, if I do drugs, so I can buy a gun.
Yeah.
And the other person on the other line shut up. And, I did ask my dealer about it, but I never did it.
Yeah.
So that was probably afraid I was going to shoot my own foot off, but that was good, right? I mean, and today now those thoughts are not as much as they used to be, right? They do crop up once in a while, and like you said, a thought's only a thought. If you act upon it, like the old days, when these kids stole my TV, I caught one of them down by the bar, and I said, I'm going to kick the crap out of you. Well, it turned ugly, let me tell you. He come over, and he was drunk, and we were going to go at it, and we never did. And I met him 2 days later, and I said, hey, he goes, what? I said, you're not drunk now. Do you want to fight still? He looked at me. He looked at me and said, no. I said, okay, right? But I wouldn't do that today.
Yeah.
If someone did that to me today and was drunk and wanted to fight, I can walk away.
Yeah.
I can walk away. Unless the guy physically attacks me, right? I can walk away.
So the other question I'm going to ask you is, you were saying in active recovery, right, that there was still some issues with self-esteem and ego, so on and so forth. Let me ask you, up to this point, I mean, I think we would both agree that your self-esteem is firing on all cylinders, right? So previous to this, what was the action that was necessary in order for you to start this change, in order to recognize the difference between your ego and your self-esteem?
Well, I think part of it was to realize that when I got hurt, a lot of times, that was my ego, right? That's my ego, right? Because, look, don't you know who I am and what I'm doing here, right? Right? I mean, like, it doesn't have to be about me, right? I can offer my 2 cents if we're in a discussion, and if no one takes it, that's just fine. I don't have to be, the top dog in the pack. Yeah. I can sit in the middle of the pack. I can do what I do and just be grateful that I'm there today, right? Yeah. Right? Whereas before, I always wanted to be the guy heard. I wanted to be the guy that, you know what, that Larry's a great guy. He gave us all these ideas.
Yeah.
No. You can only do so much, right?
Yeah.
And I'd rather be part of than not part of and thought bad of, right? So, and if I do everything the way I'm doing it, and if people still have an issue with me, that's their issue. That's not mine.
Yeah, I think that's really the breaking point, right? That's when we come to realize, like, it doesn't matter what other people think of me. The only opinion that matters about me is who I am today. That's why I'm not afraid. For a long time, I was very, how would I say, I discerned about this podcast for a long time. And the reason why I did that was I was very apprehensive in saying the things that I thought, because to a degree I am a political figure with politicians in the geographical area that I live in. And because of that, if I say the wrong thing, this could reflect the mission, so to say, of the not-for-profit that I work for very, very negatively. And I mean, it's scary to think that as much as we here in Canada, we do not have freedom of speech. What we have in Canada is we have what's called freedom to express your opinion, which means if I were to say you're a fucking asshole, you could charge me for verbal assault. But if I say, in my opinion, Larry, I think you're an asshole, you can't do shit to me, because I have that liberty by the Charter of Rights. And I'm just giving an example. But even in saying that, I became so afraid that I wasn't going to be able to say the right or appropriate thing, and I would, screw everything up. Now, to be honest with you, I just don't give a shit. If there's anything that I've come to understand is we're here in the moment of service. We're here to if anybody wants to hear our 2 cents about how we got better with our self-esteem, and which is being the topic of this podcast itself today. I think this is a great conversation, because a lot of men right now, I mean, shit, when we were born and raised as kids, you ever watch the movie Titanic, right? It wasn't the girl who jumped in the freezing water. It was the boy. When we talk about going to war, who do they say goes to war? Boys do. Women don't, right? And who gives up their life before women do? Men do. And so when we look at that, I think a lot of men, as they're growing up in that ideology, we really do second-rate our lives. We feel as if we're already ready for martyrism,
Well, that's then. Now it's taken a little turn, like as we come up in these ages, because women work now, and there were women in the factories assembling guns, making bullets, doing all that stuff, right? So and today there's dual bread earners in the family, and women do good in the army and join on the front lines because society as a whole is starting to change, right? Maybe due to electronics or whatever, the advancements, right? But when you look at everything that's going on, and when you think about it, this is what used to bother me, and it was this: I thought everybody had to like me. Right? And you know what? I've come to grips that they don't have to, right? And I'm good with that, right? There are some people out there who just won't like you. At work, I got a guy at work that we had a little discussion about hockey. He didn't like the way it went. So he comes around the corner one of the days and says, "Larry, how would you like me to kick the shit out of you?" So I didn't say nothing to him. He left, and I looked at the guy I was working with and said, "I'm stuck inside his head, right? I'm stuck in his head.
Yeah.
I got no problems with what's going on, right? If you can't have a discussion, maybe a heated one at that, about sports or just in general, and not accept, okay, well, we both got our points of view, that's okay, right? So when he comes up and says that, now I just kind of chuckle, and I even said to him once, it's good to know that I'm stuck inside your head.
Well, and I think, I think a lot of that is, sure, as we grow older, that becomes the behavior, right? Because that's the behavior that we know, and that just becomes the behavior. But I think as we're growing up, there's reinforcements all the way through that allow us to fall into those places. Like I said, Hulk Hogan raised me, and John Wayne was in the older generation.
Yeah, and Clint Eastwood.
Exactly. And so when you look at those ideological characters were always saving the damsel in distress, so on and so forth. And sure, maybe today's society is changing in this progressive ideology of equality, but let's face it, women are still not going to get past the idea of us not treating them like fine china. That's not going to stop.
Most of them, I'd agree with you there.
And that's, there's a two-way street to that. And what I'm getting about with self-esteem as a whole for boys and men, because we were boys at one time before we became these overbearing, ego-driven, pride maniac men. When we were boys, why was it so difficult for us to learn self-esteem and how to identify the difference between pride and ego and self-esteem? And that's because, let's look at who our idols were. Our idols were John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, and Hulk Hogan. Now kids have things like The Rock, and they have, it's a whole new process coming up, right? And these ideals or these idols that are coming up that are portrayed as that, in our minds we have this idea of who they are, and it's a fictional character that was brought and put before us that's never going to be real. If you were to meet Clint Eastwood today, sure, he's got the look still because he's an actor. He is very close, it seems like, to the character that he played. But he's still, he has a son. He's a compassionate, caring guy. He's had many, many wives. He's a womanizer, as a matter of fact. You know what I mean? That's the real man of Clint Eastwood. But fuck, it took me almost 30 years to figure out that Marlon Brando wasn't really the Godfather. You know what I mean? That was a movie, right? And I think as we're going in society, this is getting worse and worse and worse, where people are almost trying to live vicariously through these characters, and by living vicariously through these characters, they now try to portray it in a reality of where we are. It's almost like they're trying to make a fucking Matrix, like the movie The Matrix in reality,
and
right?
There's nothing sacred anymore due to the media, like Facebook and Google and all that. You can find just about anything you want, right? And if you think of that, right, we never had that as kids. We had rotary phones and, like you say, but part of the thing is today, whereas the situation has changed for me, is when you go into the rooms and you keep looking at those things, those little sayings, easy does it, one day at a time, think. Yeah. Larry never thought think before. Larry would react.
Yeah.
And my reaction was always bad, and it got me into scuffles with people and arguments and that, But today, because of stuff like that, you sit down and think, is it really worth it to have that person or those people pissed off because your opinion's different than theirs?
Well, and I think, so one of the reasons why I brought you in here is because there's definitely an age gap between you and I.
Yep.
Right. And one of the
You're
reasons
older than me, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. So one of the things that I was getting at by bringing you in was, even though the age is different, the fact of the matter is that our self-esteem is still in the same place.
Yep, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
We're still in the same place. So how is it that a millennial and a baby boomer can come up to the same place and find what self-esteem is? And there's, sure, my childhood, I mean, I'm the generation that first learned what the internet was. Like I think I was like 12, 13 when the internet was just coming around, and it would make those crazy ass sounds, the dial up, all that bullshit, right? And then to see where you had come from, the fact of the matter is, from childhood to the point where we realized what self-esteem was, none of those mitigating factors have ever changed. It's never changed. It's always been the same damn thing throughout that entire process, right? And so when we look at that, whether you be an addict or a normal person, the fact of the matter is you have to come to understand the difference between what ego and self-esteem is in order to feel that fulfillment of who you are, right?
Yep.
I think this is another reason why a lot of marriages and relationships break up, because both partners don't know who the hell they are. I mean, we did an episode a while back about divorce, and this guy was saying he got married at 23 years old, and I was like, probably you didn't know who the hell you were. Like were you acting as Hulk Hogan, or were you Macho Man? Like, who were you? Or were you ravishing Rick Rude? Like, who were you? Because he is about my age. And so as I was saying, there isn't much difference between the generations in the context of the deficiencies of why we don't have self-esteem, right?
Yep.
So one of the things I'd ask you is, what are the daily things that you do every day to show yourself that you're living within self-esteem as opposed to ego?
Well, first thing when I get up in the morning, right, is, of course, I get up and I wash myself and I have something to eat, and then I sit down and, I flip open the big book, right? I go to page 417, read acceptance. Then I flip over to page 86, upon awakening for that day, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I read all that, and then I flip over to page 76, step 7, right?
Yeah.
God asks you that you take all of me, good or bad, right? And I read that too, and I do that damn near every day, right? There may be a time I miss here or there, right? But when I get up, right, I fill the dog's dishes up.
Yeah.
I go outside, like I said. I look around, whether it's rainy, snowy, sunny, whatever. I look around because I'm grateful that I'm still here today, right?
Yeah.
And, I just give thanks for everybody that's come into my life along the way. Oh, there's been some rough and rocky going, but lately it seems that my self-esteem is there because I practice all the little things, and I don't think I'm better or bigger than anybody else. And it's that higher power as I'm walking along. And when I recite the Serenity Prayer, and I just take that moment just to be in myself, right? And I look around, and there's trees down, the wind is blowing, whatever. Oops, sorry about that. And I just feel that much better. I never had that feeling before I did the steps, or even up to the last while, right? I always got up and, oh, God, I got to go up. I got to do this, right?
So let me break this down, too, in this way. Remember how I was saying that people who live in the mountains are around big things?
I'm in awe.
Yeah, they get that humbleness because they actually see that huge thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we look at essentially what you're doing through prayer and making that recognition, is you're humbling yourself in order not to be ego-driven right off of the beginning of the morning, right?
Yep.
So if setting yourself up in that way, this allows you then to get onto the next activity that would put you in a place where you're able to achieve a goal, I would say, right? So what would that look like for you?
To achieve a goal?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? When I take the time in the morning to think about the things where I'm at and that, and then I say, well, okay, now I'm ready. I got to go to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I leave in plenty of time to get to work, right? First of all, I go for a workout, right? I'm up at 4:30. I get to the workout at 6 in the morning. One morning I work on the upper body, and the next morning I work on the lower body. But regardless, every day I run a little bit just to keep in shape. And it's not to be better than the next guy. It's just that I'm 62 years old, and I was tired of looking at myself the way I was. I was tired of trying to walk up the stairs, and I was out of breath, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm no longer like that. So when I go to the gym, right, there's people there that I say hi to, and they say hi to me, right? And then do my little exercise, and then go down to the pool, go swim a few lengths, get in the sauna, sit there for 5 or 10 minutes, as long as I can take it.
Yeah.
And then when I go in and take my shower and change, I'm ready for work.
Yeah.
I'm ready for work. Yeah. And like I said, I don't rush anywhere. And maybe part of that is because I always leave on time to get to where I got to go, right? And still to this day, I don't like to be rushed, but that's okay. I can tell a person I'm with, I say, hey, settle down, we'll get there, right?
So it's almost like you're constructing a little bit of... You're constructing your own goal in order to knock it down every day. I mean, when we go to work out, we try to challenge ourselves a little bit more to see if we can achieve that. However, that's not for us to boast about or tell other people. Really, the reason why we're doing that is so that it's a notch on our belt, knowing that we're a little bit healthier. Yeah. We had an episode a little while ago with a fella named Big Jeff. And Big Jeff is an ex-pro football player. He's an ex-pro wrestler.
I remember him,
And he's a big dude, real big dude. One of the things that he was saying is he said, I'm working out today, but I'm not working out for what other people are looking at. I'm working out for me, And I think there's a lot of solace in that, right? I think there's a lot of insight to that in regards to we have to put those things that are challenging in front of us. I mean, life is challenging, but the thing is with life is it's life on life's terms, and that's hence why this podcast is what it's called. You're never going to win. That's not the way how life is. It's about dealing and accepting life as what it is. But in that workout time, you can win as long as you set up your goal to win, right? And I think that's the reality. I mean, if you're running 7 minutes a day or 10 minutes, let's say 10 minutes a mile, right? And then all of a sudden you decide that you want to run that mile in 5 minutes. That's not going to fucking happen. I mean, those goals, that goal is unachievable.
Well, let's put it this way. When I started my workout, everybody at work, and especially the guy I worked with, says, "What are you going to last? A couple of days?" Right? I said, I don't know. I said, but I'm going to go and give it a try, and I'm still doing it, right? And I'm not going to say how long it is because it doesn't really matter, but I'm still doing it. It becomes part of your life. It's part of your regime during the day, right?
Yeah.
So, but if I get out of that regime, then I'll feel I have that empty space, and what am I going to do, right?
Yeah.
So, it's my goals are just to be better at where I'm at, and not to go and brag or boast about it. Just to feel better, be better, in myself, within myself, right? And that comes from, I want to see my granddaughters, right?
Yeah.
I just want to be able to help the next person that's coming along, right?
See, and that's motivation in itself. I mean, I think one of the things to recognize too is this isn't about being an addict. This isn't about being an alcoholic. This is a normal development. This is what normal people do.
Being
right?
a better normal person is what it is.
That's right. I mean, the fact of the matter is that you want to not freak out in the day, tire yourself out first thing in the morning. I mean, I started doing the same thing. I started working out, and I when I get up in the morning, the only prayer that I do right now is, God, thank you for what you've given me, and may I be in the way of service today, if it be your will for me. Right? That's my only prayer in the morning. I get up, I leave where I am at that moment. I walk. I'm lucky I have a personal gym. I jump rope. I do my boxing thing, and then I carry on with my day. I am afforded, though, the ability to be able to start my day whenever I want. You know, there's been times when my day started at 4:30 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, and I was a workaholic, and I would work till I could work till midnight. I was on these 20-hour days for a really long time, and what I would do is I'd do 4 20 hours and then crash for 3 days.
Holy smokes.
That's what I was doing. And then so now I've come to understand that as long as I'm doing something progressive towards that goal, towards that end, it's going to be okay. I mean, that's what makes me feel good. I mean, I used to go crazy with like all these sponsees and calling my number, and the reason why I was doing that was, sure, it tells me that if I do that, it'll give me immunity to my next drink, and that's great. One of the other reasons why I was doing that was because I needed to feel that important. I needed people to rely and depend upon me. And now I don't need that. I'm okay if people don't call me. It's a nice calm life. There's not as much chaos in my world today, right?
Yep.
But this feeling of self-esteem has come from humbling myself in the morning and knowing that there is something bigger than me. Then from there, putting a challenge in front of my face that's organized and getting past that. And then from there, so what does your day happen? What's it like in work? What's the challenge in work for you in order to achieve your self-esteem goals?
Well, the challenge is when you get in there, first of all, you got to get along with everybody. Hopefully, if your day starts out good, then you're going to have normally a pretty decent day. I just make sure that I say hi to my coworkers, because then they'll know that I'm not in a pissy mood, right?
Yeah.
And to get done the work that I get given during the day is what I want to do, right? So let's just say we have a couple of jobs to do and they're rushes. Sit down, figure them out, write it up, order it, get it done to the completion level, right? Do the same thing with the next one. And then if there's an emergency, then I'm ready to go and do that too, right? And I'd like to say that I'm organized, but I'm really not. But I still get my work done, maybe a little slower, maybe a couple of mistakes, but everybody makes mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. And I go to work to get some work done, a little bit of fraternizing with the co-workers, and just trying to have a good day without arguing or fighting with anybody. That's the biggest thing.
So the one thing I'll interject in that moment, and I think it'll fit it together, is emotional stability.
Yep.
Right? That's the challenge.
That's the big thing, yes.
That's the challenge. So we went from caring about our spiritual connection, which is within a humbleness. We're humbling ourselves, right? Knowing that we're small. Then the next one is to care for ourselves physically. The last one is to be emotionally stable. And between those three things in our lives, if all of those are firing,
you're good, yeah.
And then what we're looking at is a successful life that day. I mean, I think there's a lot of this also goes back to ego and pride. People believe that success is based upon the 401k for those Americans. Canadians, it would be the RRSP. And how big the house is, how many square footage, how big's the yard, how many pickets of the white fence do you have, how big's your dog, how many children, and on a scale of 1 to 10, is your wife a 9? Okay? People believe that is the definition of success. The reality is, in my opinion, success is, I woke up this morning and I knew I was small. That's great. Secondly, I stressed myself out physically and achieved my goals. Yep. Third, I didn't commit a homicide, because I definitely think about it. The likelihood of me thinking about it, though, not working out is much greater than thinking about it when I work out, the thought isn't there really, because I don't have enough energy to really hurt somebody. But if I haven't worked out, well, I might think about running somebody over. That might happen. So in saying that, I mean, those are the three things that I think are the successful goal. And if you can reiterate that throughout your day again and again and again and daily, then all of a sudden, those are notches of your personal growth and your personal success, right? So then I'm going to suggest this as the last part is, can you be of service? Because in my opinion, it takes being humble. It takes being caring for yourself physically. And it also takes emotional stability to be able to be of service for somebody if they so choose to ask for your help. Whether that be, I think I'm going to relapse, or mom saying I had a really shitty day, can I talk to you about it? Or, you know, your kids coming home from school saying I was getting bullied. Okay? Because, and let's just play that scenario out. Kid comes home and says that they got bullied, and you as the parent say, well, you should fuck them up. Or go tell the principal in the school, or go tell your counselor. What the fuck is that going to do? That's going to do absolutely nothing, really.
Might make it worse.
That's right. Yeah. And if you're sound because you took care of yourself by achieving your humility goal that morning, achieving your physical goal that morning or that day, and achieving your emotional stability, the advice that you're going to give to your kid is going to be far more superior than anything else you could have did if you hadn't taken care of yourself in those 3 other relatable things. Then you can teach them, well, this is what we do. This is how we deal with this. This is how we deal with it, with this situation and the scenario, because it happens in all facets of life.
Yep.
Whether you're an addict or a normal person, these are the keys to live by. And I see young men, I mean, they don't have a fucking clue. Like they just don't have a clue. They're looking at The Rock, thinking that should, they're entitled to that. What the hell, man? You're not entitled to shit, right?
You got to earn it.
Yeah, that's right.
You have to earn it.
And it is a daily thing to earn. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So how do you feel today about running on all cylinders?
I feel great, right? And I am running on all cylinders, right? I come in less conflict with people. I don't argue with customers. Like I say, driving now is much, much easier, even if someone is doing something wrong, right? So it's just life in general that I've gotten here today, and I feel that much better about my self-esteem. It's, man, I couldn't ask for much more, right?
That's great. Yeah. It was really nice talking to you. I think we're about an hour. Are we about an hour? Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, so we're about an hour in right now. And we'll wrap this up. But I thank you very much for coming in. We'll probably have you in again for another topic.
No problem.
And so again, I'm just going to do those plugs real quick. I think we're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, we are on Google Play, we're also on, I'm probably missing something, YouTube, bunch of other shit. I got a blog out there. I got a blog out there too. So if you're listening, I'm sure that you've probably seen my blog, and it would be greatly appreciated if you were to support us on Patreon. Be it like the cost of a coffee a week, you know. Not a shitty coffee like Tim Hortons, but a good coffee like Starbucks. $5 a week would go a long ways for us.
That keeps me awake too.
So again, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.